Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Welcome once again to Sunday afternoon talk at Amaravati. So today the title, the theme for the talk is stress-based mindfulness reduction, which might seem an unusual title for some. Probably many of you are familiar with mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is a program created in the late 1970s by John Kabat-Zinn, who's a doctor in United States, as a way of presenting meditation and mindfulness to the general public in a language free of historical and religious overtones. And when the Sangha here suggested a large variety of 175 different possible themes for these Sunday afternoon talks, different Sangha members made different suggestions. I saw this one on the list and I thought, well, that's a very good way of summarizing what our mental habits are. That the aspiration or the skillful tool developed by John Kabat-Zinn might have been mindfulness-based stress reduction, but the common human habit that we have is to get lost in what is stressful and say confusing and anxiety producing. And having got lost in that, then we increase our stress levels and we get more and more heedless. We reduce our mindfulness. So I thought that's an interesting theme to explore, to pursue for the afternoon. So we'll look at stress-based mindfulness reduction, how we get lost in these kind of say tension-producing, stressful, difficult mind states and experiences of our lives, and how that makes us more heedless, more sort of lost, and more distracted. But also later on in the talk, I'll explore ways that we can actually work with those states of anxiety and tension, those states of stress, and do something effective about those. So in considering this, then we might easily say, as I was talking about it at the mealtime when doing the Anumodana before the mealtime today, we might feel, well, there's a lot to be worried about. You know, it's reasonable to be stressed. You know, they've got the worst drought in Europe in 500 years, they say. China, they've had the worst continuous drought for 70 days. Rivers, large rivers are drying up in China. You have floods in Pakistan, in South Korea, also flooding in Utah, which is usually dry, and say the war in Ukraine, tragic warfare, massive amounts of migration, refugee populations moving around, and people seeking safety. The economy in this country going seriously pear-shaped, people talking about the prospect of inflation being at 18%, which is probably not meaningful to the younger ones of you, but to the more grey-haired and wrinkled amongst us who have an eye on the economy and expenses and things. And so then that's these are things of serious concern. Say, well, yeah, Ajahn, it's appropriate to be stressed. You know, things are very stressful, and so there's a lot to worry about. And so, in addressing these themes, I'm not trying to pretend that there aren't difficulties and challenges in our lives and important things to address in the world. Certainly, these social issues and aspects of our life are significant. They have a big impact on our health, the safety of people, well-being of people, the economy, and the well-being of the planet, global warming and so forth. So I'm not aiming to sort of dismiss or belittle those genuine concerns, but I feel where Buddha Dhamma, Buddha's teaching, can be of most benefit is about the attitude that we have towards the difficulties that we meet, either very locally with our own health, our own well-being, our own life, and with our families, our living situation, and the whole planet. When we meet with these feelings or these experiences of difficulty, wrongness, quote unquote, that sense of it shouldn't be this way, or this is a big problem, or this is a serious issue, then we tend to react to those in various different ways. And reflecting on this theme, it seemed that when the Buddha spelled out his the first teaching that he gave, the turning of the wheel of Dhamma, the setting in motion the wheel of Dhamma, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, he outlined the three principal causes for dukkha, for those feelings of dissatisfaction. When he talked about the origin of dukkha, the source, the cause of dissatisfaction, dukkha, suffering, there was three particular qualities or habits of mind that lead to that. These are kama tanha, the attachment to sense pleasure; bhava tanha, the desire to become, or the craving to become, to be something; and vibhava tanha, the craving to not be, to switch off, to not feel. And looking at the ways that, in terms of us as a human family, how we tend to relate to things that are stressful or wrong or out of order or challenging in the world, I think that those three, kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha, the desire for sense pleasure, the desire to become, or the desire to get rid of, that pretty much sums up the broad areas of how we tend to handle difficulty and things that are stressful and challenging. Probably each of us have our own favored ways of handling these, so I wouldn't make presumptions about how it is for each one of us. But probably we can all recognize these different, reactive and habitual ways that we relate to difficulty or stress when things are going wrong or challenging or have gone the way that we don't like, we don't want. So the first one, the track of the pursuit of sense pleasure, is just distracting ourselves, just filling our mind with something other, just to kind of stop thinking about the news or stop thinking about that that problem or that issue, is just fill our mind with something more exciting, more distracting. Eat something, or watch a film, or spend our time looking at YouTube videos of kittens, or competitive sport, or books. Getting lost in books and stories and film, just to fill the mind with something that takes us away from all of that which we're experiencing as stressful and painful and difficult, and so that. And I thought part of the aspect of the theme, the sort of stress-filled mindfulness reduction, is that even though there might be some temporary relief by eating something or watching YouTube videos or filling our mind with game shows or chat shows on television or competitive sports or whatever it might be, that that distraction or that sense of relief, rather like scratching an injury, as a bit of relief, but it can actually make the wound worse. It doesn't really get to the source of the stress. It can actually, unfortunately, sadly, increase it. Also, I would categorize in that the reactive pattern of the pursuit of sense pleasure, getting angry, getting upset, that we can get a certain relief by, what they call doom scrolling, going through your phone, reading all of the dreadful things that happen. Oh my goodness, there's that too. Oh, and that too, and that as well. Oh my goodness, there's a kind of endorphin flush of, oh my goodness, another disaster. Yes, I don't know if doom scrolling has made it into the Oxford English Dictionary. It probably has by now. It's probably been there for a few years. But doom scrolling, there's a certain satisfaction in getting more and more horrible information, or blaming. You're blaming the government, blaming the corporations, blaming our family, blaming somebody, anybody. That getting upset, getting angry out. So that's also part of that karma tanha. That the seeking to deal with that stress, those difficulties, and those challenges that we meet, getting angry, getting upset, blaming, criticizing, and contending, and getting drawn into hatred and aversion. There's a weird kind of satisfaction in getting angry, getting upset, and why doom scrolling is a thing. It's like why people find themselves doing it. That there's a kind of strange satisfaction in finding out even more bad news from even more places around the world. So that's one particular track of how we deal with difficulty. But I would suggest that is it leads towards mindfulness reduction. What we're doing with that is that the mind is investing in those the badness or the wrongness or the painfulness. It's reifying it. It's making that seem more solid, more real, and more substantial, and so that the dukkha is real. There's no perspective on it. So I would say mindfulness is a lot to do with having a perspective on what we're experiencing, whether it's pleasant or painful or neutral. And that when we get lost in sense pleasure, absorbing our mind in a distraction, in blaming or criticizing, or just our attention filled with something else, we're losing perspective. We're absorbing into something that's to do with sex or violence or excitement or eating or challenging or conflict. That the mind is absorbing into that which is interesting. So there's a loss of perspective, and so that's why it's mindfulness reduction. I would suggest there'll be a lot of opportunity for people to ask questions and bring up points at the end in the second part of the session. But that's how it seems to me. So then the other two kinds of causes of dissatisfaction or dukkha that the Buddha highlighted. The pursuit of sense pleasure, kama tanha, is the most obvious. That's the when we think of desire or craving, that's the kind of thing I've been describing is what might be most obvious. When we think of craving, we think of craving for something to see or to hear or to eat or to feel. Craving for sense pleasure. So when we think of craving or desire, then usually sense pleasure is the most obvious thing that we think of. But the other two kinds of craving that the Buddha highlighted are more subtle, but in a way that they can be even more dangerous or more challenging for us because they're less visible, less obvious. And these are bhava tanha and vibhava tanha, the desire to become or the desire to be, that sense of defined being, bhava tanha it's called, and vibhava tanha, the desire to not be, to not feel, to switch off, so that in terms of how we handle the difficulties of life with the drought or the floods or the economy or the warfare and the stresses to the planet, the global warming and climate change and so on, that the track of the desire to become bhavatanha, we can get busy gathering more information and not just sort of pursuing it for sense pleasure, but just thinking, I should know more, I have to find out more, I must, just gathering information, getting anxious. There's a way that just me feeling worried about something. There's a kind of strange satisfaction in that we find out more about it. We put our mind onto that issue. We absorb into that particular area, and not realizing that again we're solidifying it, we're reifying it, we're making it more substantial, more real than it genuinely is, and just that act of worrying about something, we don't realize it's an act. We say, "But this is worrying, Ajahn. This is a real problem, and it's my responsibility to worry about it. If I'm not worrying about it, I'm not doing my duty." That's the kind of thing that we feel. I'm not reading anyone's mind. I'm trying not to project too much, but just from my own experience, I would suggest I was a world-class worrier for many years, much of my life. And as I've said numerous times, that I'd already been in the monastery for 6 or 7, maybe 7 or 8 years before I realized that my fundamental relationship to life was, if it exists, worry about it. So the basic relationship to the world is anything that is there, it's to be worried about. And it was such a strong habit, I didn't even realize that I did this. I didn't even realize it was a thing that was done until I spent 7 or 8 years listening to Lumpur Sumedho. Finally, oh my goodness, he's talking about emotion. This worrying is an emotion. Oh my goodness, my mind does this all the time. Wow, I'm really a worried person. And so that I would say that the track of the desire to become, the desire to be, that sense of, I'm worrying about this. There's a me here who's the worrier, and there's a thing that is being worried about, and that dynamic, something we can be drawn into that. And again, I would say there's a loss of perspective. It seems a real problem. It's our duty to worry about. So that habit of worrying about things, or trying to help, feeling like I should do something, I've got to do something. It's my obligation. I can't just know about this and do nothing. And so getting busy, being helpful. I'm not saying we shouldn't be. We should be kind of uncompassionate, compassionate and caring. These are wonderful, important qualities. But when they are, attached to without mindfulness and wisdom, when they're followed blindly, then even the desire to help, or the activity of helping others and sort of doing your bit, it can be something that's painful, stressful. I lived in Northern California for a long time, and they have an expression there, particularly in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is compassion fatigue. An interesting term, where so many people are so sort of socially minded, so caring, and trying to do so many good things for so many other beings, other people, and the society, and the planet, the forests, the oceans, that in getting exhausted, getting drained by all this stuff I got to be doing, I should be doing, and sadly I've even known people to take their own lives because of that. This sense of pressure that they have been created from their own kind of sense of obligation. And that tragically and painfully, it can even go to those kind of extremes where I can't do enough, I should be doing more, I'm a terrible person. The difficulty that other beings have, I'm to blame for this, which is really tragic and sad. So it's, even though that desire to become is more subtle than, say, the sense desire and the kind of surface level distraction, it can have extremely negative, painful consequences if we're drawn into that, if we don't have a sense of perspective on that. And so I would say that getting busy, compulsive helping, or compulsive worrying and fretting, we might not. It might be a bit close to calling yourself a fritter, but a fretter, F-R-E-T-T-E-R, because I was a compulsive fretter. I would fret about things very, very easily. But I've used that word a few times. He thinks he's a fritter. So, fretter, F-R-E-T-T-E-R, compulsive fretting. I found that very easy to get into that, and just tiny things that the mind would latch onto, and then get anxious, create anxiety about, and absorb into that anxiety, and make it a personal problem. Then the third of these, the sort of the partner to the desire to become, is the desire to get rid of, vibhava tanha in Pali. And those of you who've listened to Luang Por Sumedho's talks or read his books will know he talks about these two qualities very, very regularly, because they are, in terms of meditation practice, they're extremely prevalent. They're very common habits. The desire to become, to get concentrated, to get enlightened, or the desire to get rid of our defilements, to get rid of our chattering thoughts, to get rid of our problems, and so forth. And so vibhava tanha, the way that manifests in terms of dealing with difficulty or challenges in society, in the family, in the economy, and in the world, is just to switch off, to not feel. So alcohol, drugs are particularly effective, or common in I wouldn't say effective. Again, might be a temporary relief, like scratching an itch. There might be a temporary relief where you can just stop feeling for a bit, but the drug wears off, the alcohol wears off, and then things are worse than they were before. So that's that sense of going numb or switching off, not feeling. That's the desire for annihilation, the vibhava tanha track. So that just I don't want to know about it. I can't deal with this. Just zoning out, switching off, shutting down, and that this is one of the tactics that we tend to use in our sort of habitual ways as human beings of dealing with difficulty and challenges. It's a very obviously an unmindful state, but it can provide some kind of temporary relief, just sleeping through your difficulties, just switching off, not feeling, going numb, finding a way to get comfortably numb, as the Pink Floyd song, I think, is it was after my time. I became I went into the Sangha in 1978, but I believe there's a Pink Floyd song called "Comfortably Numb," which is describes that sense of switching off and not feeling. It's very attractive, appealing, just to zone out, to dissociate, to disconnect from that which is challenging or seems to be so burdensome, stressful. So this all might sound extremely depressing. Just categorizing all these different tactics that we use, but I feel it's helpful to, the Buddha was like a doctor, and he was known as the doctor of the world, the great doctor, the great physician, the Besaja Guru, the supreme physician. And going to the doctor, the doctor doesn't. It's not very helpful if the doctor says everything's all right. It's more helpful if the doctor says, where does it hurt? So what are the symptoms? You've come to see the doctor. So where does it hurt? What are the symptoms? What's the issue? So this is in a way checking out the symptoms and seeing what the condition is. So roughly speaking, you can, I think, particularly in terms of how we feel these states as individuals, on the mental level, as an individual, in the mental world, if the mind is drawn into that, the desire to become the bhava tanha track, then we get lost in associative thought, conceptual proliferation, what's called papancha in Pali. The mind just goes on and on, churns, ruminates, goes on and on and on, creating one story after another, and creating those kind of challenges, and reiterates them, and brings no rest. So that there's that quality of papancha, or conceptual proliferation, the restless thoughts that seem to never stop. And for many of us, that's a painful, difficult presence in our lives. Just not being able to sleep, insomnia or anxiety, because the endless inner narratives just keep chattering on and on and on. Or on the mental level, that quality of just sort of switching off or shutting down on the psychological level, just that say dissociating and switching off, and they'd say that sense of going into some kind of a blank state, just to get away from those difficulties. And oftentimes when we try to meditate and we find ourselves falling into dullness and sleepiness, often the cause of dullness in meditation, it's not tiredness, it's not physical tiredness, it's just the mind being tired of the endless chatter or the anxieties. So we sit down, cross our legs, close our eyes, out we go, nap time, because we don't want to have to just to deal with all of that chatter, so that the system develop. I'm not recommending this as a as a path, but some of us who've been meditating for many years, it can be unfortunately a well-worn track that you sit down, close your eyes, and then it can feel quite peaceful, but it's what Lumpur Sumedho would call the water buffalo equanimity. It's like the kind of the mind has switched off and is sort of disconnected. It's in a dull, stupefied state. It's not. It's not illuminated. It's not a radiant kind of peacefulness. Please have a seat. Yeah. It's not a radiant and bright, energetic kind of peacefulness. It's a dull and sort of switched off, insensitive kind of peacefulness. On a physical level, then for us as individuals, when the mind is sort of following the bhava tanha track, that sense of or also with following sense pleasure, it usually manifests as a kind of physical tension, just the stressing in the body, that there's a tension in our face, in our neck, in our jaw, in our shoulders, in our hands, and just physical tension. And it's quite common when people coming asking for advice about meditation, they say, "I'm just so tense, I'm just uptight." And so that habit of dealing with difficulty and problematic issues, the body tenses up against it. There's a stressing in the body. And then, the counterpart to mental dullness on the vibhava tanha, the desire to get rid of, the desire to switch off, is that our bodies can just be kind of numb, insensitive. We might feel like, well, I know I'm alive because I can see things, I can hear things, but it feels like I'm so dead from the chin down, that there's no sensitivity, there's no feeling in the body, so that the body can go seemingly kind of completely numb and insensitive. So these are challenging and so habitual pathways that we can follow. And so we might recognize this, like, I'm getting lost in distraction, I'm getting caught up in spending hours and hours watching repeats of game, not even today's game shows, repeats of old game shows that I've already seen before, or watching endless movies, or getting lost in detective novels, or whatever, this distraction, and or getting caught up in anxiety, and or just going numb and following these different tracks of avoidance. Of dukkha. And so we might think, well, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a meditator, I want to practice with this, I really need to address this, I want to work with these habits. But possibly even more depressingly, and I'm not pursuing this theme in order to make us more miserable and depressed than we were when we came in the door, but I feel it is helpful to look at that. Unfortunately, but very commonly, what happens is that these same habits of the desire to become and the desire to get rid of, they infiltrate. They're an insidious presence within our meditation practice. We're trying to work with these unskillful and unhelpful habits with using meditation for that. But unfortunately, sadly, tragically, the same habits can work into our meditation. And so again, I would say this is one of the reasons why Luang Por Sumedho would talk about bhavatanha, vibhavatanha, the desire to become and the desire to get rid of. He would talk about them so much because it's such a common trait, such a common habit within us in meditation. And I found it kind of really illuminating hearing him talk about this over and over again. It did take me quite a few years to get a sense of, oh, this is what he's talking about. Oh, when he talks about the desire to become, it's like, oh, my ambitiousness, me trying to get rid of my chattering thoughts, or me trying to conquer my defilements, or me trying to be enlightened, me wanting to be a stream enterer, me wanting to become a perfect monk. Oh, right, that's bhavatanha vibhavatana. Oh, right. So having heard him giving these talks and reading his books for years and years, it did take a while to sink in. But I feel this is an extremely important area for us to consider, to look at, because we can practice with great sincerity. Think, well, I'm following the instructions that I've heard in the Dhamma talks, in the books, in the suttas, that you should get rid of your defilements, the defilements of sense desire, of ill will, of restlessness, of dullness, of doubt. You have to get rid of the hindrances, the nivaranas. You have to get rid of them. You have to develop concentration. You have to get concentrated. You have to develop jhana. You have to develop insight. You should. And hearing these words, you might be thinking, like, well, yes, we should, Ajahn. So what's wrong with any of that? That's what it says in the teachings. And this is where I feel it's so ironic and tragic, is that it's because of a lack of mindfulness that what happens is that those skillful means, those ways of working with the say the nivaranas, the hindrances of sense desire and ill will and restlessness and so on, that they get taken personally. That I have got a lot of restlessness, I've got a chattering mind, I've got a lot of lustfulness, I've got a lot of doubts, I need to get rid of my doubts. I have got doubts, I need to get rid of them. If I get rid of them, there'll be me without the doubts. If I get rid of my aversion, there'll be me without the aversion. That'll be a good thing. So again, hearing these words, you might think, well, yes, Ajahn, that all sounds really good. But notice I'm stressing the I am, this is what I've got, and I need to get rid of it. So again, unconsciously, because of a lack of mindfulness and wisdom, there's a reifying, a making solid. There's a me here, the owner of these defilements of sense desire or ill will or restlessness, desire, dullness. There's a me here who's got these problems, and if I get rid of these things that I have got, then there will be progress. There'll be development. There'll be liberation. And so I was incredibly grateful, in these years, in the late 80s, early 90s, when Luang Por Sumedho was talking about this. So much when it had taken that long for the penny to drop, I fully confess. But then, and he would talk about changing the paradigm from me and my problems to the Buddha seeing the Dhamma, or the awake mind seeing the way things are. Just seeing how the mind frames it. I've got this problem with lustfulness. I've got this problem with doubt. I've got this problem with restlessness or aversion. Yeah, I've got this problem with dullness. He said, look at that. Notice that. There's the me and my problems. That's the paradigm. That's the framework that we habitually create. That there's the assumption that there's a real individual, independent person here who is the genuine owner of this particular problem, or that this person needs to get concentration, needs to get insight. And when this individual person has got insight, has got concentration, has got development, then this person will be enlightened, or this person will be liberated. So he said, look at that framework, look at the paradigm that the mind creates, challenge that. That if you're setting the paradigm in place as what we're doing is we're establishing Dhamma practice on the basis of self-view. That's the very first obstacle to enlightenment is self-view, sakkaya ditthi. So that right there, you're kind of locking the door you're actually kind of locking the door in front of you, not behind you. You're actually preventing any kind of genuine development by establishing practice based on self-view. So he would say, change the paradigm from me and my problems to here is the awake mind seeing the way things are. So that, yes, it might be that sense desire arises, or ill will arises, or doubt arises, but rather than I've got a doubt problem, or I've got an anxiety problem, I've got a stress problem here. Here in this mind, there's the experience of doubt arising. It feels like this. Here's the experience of sense desire. It feels like this. Here's the experience of ill will. It feels like this. There's the awake mind, the Buddha mind, the knowing mind, aware of the way things are in this moment. So rather than establishing a framework, a paradigm of me as this individual person who's got these particular problems or issues or potentials, rather, here is the quality of awareness that knows this pattern of nature as it's arising. So that it's the awake mind seeing the pattern of nature, the way things are in this moment. And so that, I feel, in terms of skillfully working with these habits of stress-based mindfulness reduction, to go in the other direction of mindfulness-based stress reduction, to establish genuine mindfulness and to reduce the stressing and the problem-making factory that is very active within most of our minds, to see how that habit is well formed. You can't just decide, from now on I won't let my mind think in that way. We can't just decide as an act of will to change the habits of a lifetime, but at least we can see that those habits are there. We can get familiar with those symptoms, and then work with the development of changing the attitude, changing the framework that we use. So that this, I feel, is an extremely important, significant area of practice. And so, when the Buddha speaks about the four qualities supportive of stream entry, that are highlighted in a number of different teachings. The first one is drawing close to good people, sapurisa sangseva. So I would suggest gathering for a Sunday afternoon to listen to a Dhamma talk. And this is an opportunity to draw close to good people. I'm not trying to flatter or praise us as a group, but this is a pretty skillful thing to be doing with a Sunday afternoon, considering all the things that one could be doing with a Sunday afternoon. So that gathering together with good-hearted, like-minded people, trying to cultivate, put effort into cultivating the good and to end dukkha in our lives and the lives of others, I would say that's indicative of sapurisa, good-hearted, drawing close to good-hearted people. Then the second factor, supportive of stream entry, is sadhamma savana, listening to the good Dhamma. So hopefully the reflections that are offered here and what you can spend your time doing, drawing close to good teachings, helpful, wise, liberating teachings. Sadhamma savana is the second one. The third one is yoniso manasikara, wise reflection. So using our intelligence, our capacity to think and to explore, to recognize the patterns of the world, rather than using our intelligence to get lost in conceptual proliferation, ruminating and generating anxiety. We can use our capacity to think and to reflect very differently. So yoniso manasikara, wise reflection, is extremely important capacity. So it's really the ability of the mind to recognize the patterns that exist in nature, how one thing relates to another, how nature works, how life works, and how things relate to each other. So yoniso manasikara, that investigative, exploratory ability that we have, and the ability to recognize how things relate to each other. So wise reflection or investigation. And then the fourth one, which is so the main significant point here, I would say, is Dhamma Nudhamma Patipada, which is an extremely long Pali word. Dhamma Nudhamma Patipada. which means practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma. And the kind of counterpoint to that is practicing Dhamma in accordance with self-view, like me practicing to get somewhere, or me trying to get rid of my defilements, me trying to get insight, me trying to get concentration, me trying to become enlightened. So that would be practicing Dhamma based on self-view and on delusion. So they can look very like each other, like in T.S. Eliot's one of his poems, he says, like the stinging nettle and the dead nettle, they sit beside each other in the hedgerow, but they look like each other, but they're completely different plants. You know, one is a stinging nettle, and one is one will sting you and one won't. But they look like each other, but they're completely different things. So practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma is how to train the mind, how to work with this life free of self-view, free of conceit, and in tune with reality, in tune with Dhamma. And the other is more like the stinging nettle, which is where we practice Dhamma based on self-view. And so one of the things that when there's a lot of self involved, even though we might be sincerely trying to work with our habits of stressing and feeling burdened, that it can be equally exhausting to be practicing. That we might find it's, I don't want to sit and meditate. It's just too much. I don't want to deal with it. I just want to switch off. Watch the TV, or read a book, or take a nap. Just the meditation, rather than being a source of peace and liberation, is another chore that I have to do. And again, I'm not reading anybody's mind. He said, how did he know that? Like, as I often say, it's statistics, not psychic power. It's just that, because I would say the reason why meditation can be stressful and burdensome is because it's me doing it. That's what is the stressor is me. It's not the meditation. I also like to point out how often it's when the bell rings at the end of the meditation. If you're sitting not by yourself, if you're sitting in a group of people and somebody else is ringing the bell, when the bell goes, isn't it? It's not just because your knees are released from their prison, I would say, but that sense of relief. Again, I'm not reading anybody's mind, but that sense the bell goes, thank goodness I don't have to do that anymore. Isn't that weird? It's like the moment of the great peace is when the meditation stops. The meditation, which is for peacefulness and liberation, the meditation stops, ding, and then there's relief, there's peace. So that's a clue that it's me doing the meditation that's burdensome, that it's a thing I have to be doing, and that ideally, in a perfect world, the meditation is the peaceful bit, but it's because it gets co-opted, these insidious presence of bhavatanha, vibhavatanha, these quiet sort of viruses, these sort of the psychological COVID-19 variants that sort of sneak in and spread very, very effectively. They slide into the system and take over. So in terms of practice, that Dhamma Dhammapatipada, practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma, this is so helpful, so beneficial. To recognize those habits of selfing around, I should meditate, this is my mind, I wish my mind wasn't like this, I wish it was like that. Just to begin by flagging all that I-making and mind-making that occurs. Just notice how much there is of that during the course of a day or a period of meditation. To notice that and to see how the paradigms that the mind makes. Like, I've got a lot of restlessness, or I've got a problem with physical pain, or I've got a doubt problem, or I've got a lust problem, or I've got an aversion problem. I need to get rid of that. Catch those judgments. Like, who is it that has those problems? Who is it that owns doubt? What is it that is aware of this physical discomfort? To see that I-making and mind-making habit, and that very act of seeing, of knowing it, then to let that have its own effect. Because, again, even that seeing can get co-opted by vibhavatanha or bhavatanha, like, oh, I'm doing that selfing thing. I've got to get rid of my selfing habit. ding, vibhavatana sort of come in again. Like I've got a self-creating habit. If I get rid of my self-creating habit, then there'll be me without this habit, and that'll be a good thing. Ding. Okay. But the word insidious is very appropriate in this respect. I think they kind of slide into the picture. They filter into the system without it being noticeable, without it being acknowledged, but they have a potent effect. So to trust the power of wisdom, of awareness, of vicca. So just knowing that aversion to pain, or that feeling of restlessness, or the presence of a doubt, and just letting the awareness have its own effect. So I like to talk about this principle of a self-adjusting universe, or a self-adjusting system. The awareness, that quality of vicca, awakened awareness, that's the balancing, that's the curative agent, that's the integrative agent. That's not another too long a word. That which brings things together in a harmonious way. So it's a trusting that quality of awareness. And again, those of you who've been listening to Luang Por Sumedho's talks or reading his books, he talks a lot about trusting in awareness. So I would say this is what it means. Trusting in awareness is that when oh look, here's the mind saying, I wish I could get rid of my chattering thoughts. This is the I wish I could get rid of my chattering thoughts feeling. Here it is. Just letting the awareness of that have its effect. And then what happens generally is that because those things are being known as a mental event, as a pattern of nature, that this desire for this, or this aversion for that, this worry about this tension in the body, that very, say, quality of awareness, that knowing, it by itself has a balancing effect, an integrative effect. That there's no I or me or mine involved in that. It's the thinking mind can say, oh, this is my awareness, or I am doing the awareness thing, but that's more self-creation on its own. That quality of vicca, that awakened awareness, it's not a person. It doesn't belong to a person. It's what arises in the heart when there's genuine mindfulness and wisdom. That quality of knowing is what arises from that, attuned engagement with the present reality. The heart, the mind engages with the present reality in a completely unobstructed way. So that's what I would recommend in terms of developing a counterpoint to the habits of stress-based mindfulness reduction, to say consciously develop this way of working with our life, with our mind, with a trusting of awareness, letting mindfulness and wisdom be what guides our actions, to see how strong the habits might be in terms of Dhamma practice of I should, I must. Because it's ironic and tragic how much time and effort we can put in, years and years, decades and decades of effort sincere effort can be put into developing concentration, developing insight, keeping the precepts, offering dana, supporting monasteries, or becoming monks and nuns, shaving our head, putting on robes. We can do it with great sincerity, but as long as that's based on I should, I must, I am, then we're creating the causes of dukkha in that very framework. So challenging that, and to trust in awareness. And I would say particularly in this area, I would suggest that the two aspects of the Eightfold Path that are particularly important is right intention, samma sankappo, and right effort, samma vayamo. Because oftentimes that it can feel like any sort of effort is intrinsically stressful. Me doing something is hard work, it's a burden, and that we feel, if I just didn't have to do this when it's the weekend, when I retire, when I'm on holiday, when the meditation's over, then I can have a break, then I can have a rest. Any kind of doing, again, I'm not reading anybody's mind, this is statistics, not psychic power, that any kind of doing is easily taken as being stressful or burdensome. And we think of, when I don't have to do, when there isn't anything I have to do, then there's peace. But if you reflect upon it, there has to be a way that effort can be made that is peaceful in itself, and it leads towards peacefulness. Otherwise, samma vayamo, attuned effort or right effort, that couldn't be a part of the Eightfold Path. If every kind of effort was necessarily burdensome or a hassle or stressful, there couldn't be a right effort in the Eightfold Path. If you're familiar with the Buddha's teaching, that the Eightfold Path is the path to the end of suffering. So it's peaceful in its activity and it's peaceful in its result. So there has to be a way that effort can be made that is not stressful, that we can do, and also with respect to intention or decision making, samma sankappo, right intention, right resolution. There has to be a way that decisions can be made, direction can be given to our life that also is not stressful or personal. We might think, I decide, or I choose, or I'm going to go this way. We might personalize it, or we might make it hold it as something that, I'm deciding this, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to do this instead. But there has to be a way that decision-making also is not personal and is also peaceful. It's not stressful or anxiety-producing. I want to choose the right thing. I don't want to choose the wrong thing. I want to make sure I go in the right direction. I don't want to go in the wrong direction. What will they think if I get this wrong? And I want to get it right, so I'll be praised and succeed. So there has to be a way that decisions can be made, direction can be given that is not personal and that is also as peaceful. So in those two areas of the Eightfold Path in particular, I feel it's really helpful to look at that and to see how we can make decisions, give direction to our life based on mindfulness and wisdom rather than on me and mine, what I should do, what I shouldn't do, what I want, what I don't want, but rather to attune the heart, the mind to the present situation, to use those qualities of wise reflection, mindfulness, wisdom, to assess how things are, and then to draw upon those qualities, intuitive wisdom, to see what looks like a good way forward. And then to say, okay, this looks like, of all the possibilities that seem to be apparent, this looks like a way forward that will bring most benefit, will be most effective. Let's try this and see what happens. Rather than, I've decided to do this, I want to get it right, I don't want to get it wrong. But rather, this looks like a good way forward. Let's try this, see where it goes. And then if it leads to a beneficial result, then rather than, yes, I got it right, people will be so pleased and so impressed, or like, oh no, I got it wrong, everyone hates me, they think I'm an idiot. That is, again, the habitual ways we relate to success and failure. Is that we take it very personally. But if we base decision-making on mindfulness and wisdom, okay, this looks like a good way forward, let's try this and see what happens. If it's not based on self-view, then even if it goes to this wasn't a good choice, this is a dead end. That's why they said, that's why there were those signs saying diversion, because this road is closed. Okay, let's just... There isn't a way forward here, let's turn around and go back. It's not taken in a personal way. It's not like an ego-based disaster. It's rather like, oh, that's why the sign said diversion. I saw it said diversion, and somehow I thought it didn't apply to us. Right, again, I'm not spying on anyone, but probably most of us have had that kind of experience from time to time, that, okay, that's not a way forward, let's turn around, go back. And it's not taken as a loss or a problem or anything that is a cause for anxiety or difficulty, but rather it's a skill. We work with a situation, and we learn when things don't come out in a fortunate way. We learn from that. We don't take it personally. When things come out in a fortunate way, we learn from that. We don't take that personally. Rather than, yeah, I got it right. I'm a success. This is perfect. This is wonderful. Everyone will think I'm great. I chose the perfect route. They'll be so impressed. Like, okay, well, that worked that time. We'll see what happens next time. Well, let's learn from this and say, not making a meal out of it if we get things right, or we're praised or successful, and not looking upon it as a disaster if things go poorly or come out in a way that brings more difficulties. But whether it's got, conventionally speaking, a success or a failure, we learn from that. Oh, in terms of working with these habitual traits of getting lost in papancha, conceptual proliferation, again, if there's that rousing of awareness and that knowing of the mind getting lost in thought, rather than, oh, I've got to stop my mind proliferating, then to know that, to reflect on that and say, okay, well, I've been lost in this train of thought. Where did this begin? And we can follow it back, and this can be an interesting exercise to sort of trace back to the source, where your particular sort of 2.5 hours of distraction, where that began. It's like, oh, well, I just saw that person's name in a headline, and I thought, oh, who is that? And then I looked up the name, and then turned into this whole kind of search through Wikipedia and out into the maps of the world, and how did I get here? And, oh, it all began with I just happened to see that name in a headline, and I wasn't even particularly interested in the story. Oh, that's where it began. And say, oh, that was what it all came from. So that just hearing the sound of a bird or noticing a sensation in your body, that, oh, it was just that sensation, it was just that sound, it was just seeing that word, that's all. All of that whole universe just whoop, arose from that. Aha, look, it was really nothing. There was no thing really there at the root, at the origin. So that can be an interesting, useful exercise to work with papancha, conceptual proliferation. Also, just to see how we have a habit about, and again going back to my worrying tendencies for many years, was that the way my mind related to the experience of wrongness or imperfection was to worry about it. And I brought along this this little booklet. This is called the Sin Sin Ming, The Verses on the Faith Mind, by Seng San, the third patriarch of the Chan tradition in China. And I'd read this many times. I heard it quoted many times. But during that era of finally getting the message of Luang Por Sumedho's teachings about meditation on emotion and the habit of creating worry, there's particular lines at the end of it which says, "One thing, all things, move among and intermingle without distinction. To live in this realization is to be without anxiety about non-perfection." To live in this realization is to be without anxiety about non-perfection. And even though I'd read those words, this is a very worn-out copy, as you can probably see. I'd read those words many times. I heard them many times. The penny really dropped. It's like, wow, to be without anxiety about non-perfection. So it's recognizing, the mind sees this as imperfect. The economy, the family, the drought, the war in the Ukraine, it's imperfect. There's wrongness there. There's things that are out of balance, but we don't have to invest in anxiety, to be without anxiety about non-perfection. We're not switching off, we're not getting tangled up, there's a knowing of that, and on a conventional level it's imperfect, but on an ultimate level it's like this. Doesn't mean we don't do anything, it doesn't mean that we don't take action, but the heart frees itself from that stressing, that anxiety-generating habit, to be without anxiety about non-perfection. It was I was in the old Sara. I remember hearing Luang Por Sumedho saying something, and then thinking of those words. And, wow, that's never crossed my mind as a possibility. Like, if it's imperfect, worry about it. Right? To be without anxiety doesn't mean that you don't care, but the mind is just not getting lost in that reactive pattern in respect to it. So, and then with a mental numbing, then we find that we can generate brightness. And I would say that quality of vijja, or awakened awareness, that is the source of inner brightness, the pabhasara citta, the bright heart, the bright mind. that the more that quality of awareness is generated, that is the source of brightness. So rather than just going or switching off and going numb, to cultivate consciously that quality of awareness, that using that, trusting in awareness to wake up to what is present. On the physical level, if we find ourselves tense and uptight, just to take the time to feel the presence of the body, to know those feelings, not to hate that or fear that or resent that, just to know that tension in the body, and once again cultivating awareness. Let the awareness, rather than I've got to get rid of my tension. If I can get rid of my tension, there'll be me free of tension, and that will be good. To just let the awareness of that tensing habit have its effect. Let that, like the sun coming up in the morning and evaporating the dew, just let that the sunlight, the warmth of that awakened awareness have its effect, and then see that the tension in the body, it can't sustain itself in that light of awareness. And then also that kindness, that quality of caring attention, that also counteracts the physical numbing. The kind of, you notice that there's a body that below my chin. That's what stops my chin from scraping along the ground when I walk around. It's like there is actually a live body down here that feels and is mobile and is active. It's alive. It's awake. So that quality of vicca, that awakened awareness, it enlivens and sensitizes the whole being as well. So I offer these thoughts for consideration this afternoon.
Thank you, Ajahn Amaro, for that good talk, really useful talk. I have to clarify something about sati. I read one of the Dhamma books. The sanya occurs in the conscious, wholesome and unwholesome group of consciousness. And the sati occurs only in the wholesome consciousness. If that is the case, there are a lot of mindfulness going on all over the world without any sila.
Mm-hmm.
So isn't it dangerous to do mindfulness without sila? Or can you benefit without sila doing the mindfulness?
Well, coincidentally, this is something I've spoken about quite a lot in the past. So along with the sati that is completely wholesome, there's also miccha sati, kind of wrong kinds of mindfulness, as well as samasati. And so one of the downsides of the more public programs like mindfulness-based stress reduction or mindfulness-based cognitive therapy for depression, that they have quite deliberately left out sila, and it's a specific choice on behalf of the people who created those programs. I've discussed this with John Kabat-Zinn and also others, and I've gone into print a couple of times on this issue because in a way, if it's any kind of samasati has always got some kind of implicit aspect of sila. That is implicit within that along with paying attention to the present moment, there's part of that attention is the recognition of what's wholesome and what's unwholesome. And so if it's samasati, if it's sort of mindfulness that's in tune with Dhamma or right mindfulness, then there's intrinsically an aspect of sila involved in that. If it's what's presented as mindfulness and that sila is deliberately left out, I would say that's more of an attention training. Yeah, it can be useful to learn how to focus your attention, to concentrate on a particular task, but I would say that it's not mindfulness as would be implied by samasati or mindfulness that's in tune with Dhamma. So it's a major talking point around the world and in this field. And as I said, I've gone into print a couple of times, and actually another book I'm just preparing, I got a whole spiel on that as well. And also just I think a paper, a talk that I gave in Stanford University that just got posted on the Amaravati website. It actually talks about that in some detail, because I feel that if mindfulness or attention training is developed without this aspect of sila, you can become very effective at doing unskillful things. And one interesting or sort of interesting / shocking, frightening account was in a book called *Sapiens* by Yuval Harari, called *Sapiens*, about the mind and people. He quotes an account of a journalist who went to do a story on the American military, and she describes how she had, it seems to be quite a reliable account, and she was writing in a reputable journal, and she was trying out this the sniper range, or the shooting range. And so that she had never done this before. She hadn't fired weapons or was not familiar with guns. And so they kitted her out with this particular kind of helmet, which they increased your capacity to focus attention. And so if you read this account, it's in the book *Sapiens*, which I've got it flagged on. My copy has got flagged on that page because it is so startling. And so she describes, this reporter describes her experience of putting on this helmet making attention more acute. And then she says they began the exercise. They started sort of running the targets, and she's there with a rifle in her hands, and then she said the next thing I knew, the operative was saying, "Okay, we're finished now," and then she said, she kind of asked, "Well, how did I do? Did I manage to hit any of the targets?" And then the person, the military officer who was looking after it, she said, "You hit all of them." So she had 100% success rate on the firing range in accuracy of firing the weapon and hitting her targets, but she had no she wasn't consciously aware of doing that as she was doing it. So you can read that account both in Harari's book and also in the original magazine article that she wrote. So to me, that's pretty shocking. So it's a kind of an attention-enhancing machinery that can be used in military circumstances. So it's the attention is sharper, but it's for the purpose of killing people. So therefore, extremely unskillful and unwholesome, as unwholesome as you can get. So I have had an ongoing campaign to try and persuade people like John Kabat-Zinn and Mark Williams and all these good people. These are friends of mine. I mean, I know these people well. At least John Kabat-Zinn I know quite well. And been quietly persuading them that maybe the next stage of mindfulness is, rather than mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, mindfulness-based behavior therapy. And so that, because also in terms of the therapeutic model, and maybe there's a few therapists here today, in terms of therapy, it can be a very strict no-no for the therapist to tell a person to change their behavior. Their job is to help them deal with their minds, but you can't say, you should behave differently. So if you and so to be able to say, if you were not cheating on your spouse, you would feel less anxious, or if you didn't make a livelihood out of defrauding the bank that you work for, you would feel more at ease with life. Apparently, I mean, maybe those are extreme examples, but it's not the therapist's job. Or a therapist in some circumstances can lose their license if they are telling people how to live their lives. And so that I'd like to change that personally, to say that, well, because within Buddhist psychology, Buddhist practice, what you do, the words you say, the actions you take are intrinsically related to how you feel. And when the Buddha talks about the process of liberation, one particular teaching, a sutta known as "Liberation is a Natural Process." He says, one who lives according to the moral precepts, who keeps sila, they don't have to think, "May I be free of remorse." One who keeps the precepts is naturally free from remorse. They don't have to think, "May I be free from remorse," because they're not creating the conditions whereby remorse would arise. One who is free of remorse doesn't have to think, "May my body be relaxed," because one who is free of remorse, their body is naturally relaxed. One whose body is relaxed, they don't have to think, "May I experience pamoja, delight, may I be at ease," because it's natural for one whose body is relaxed and is free of remorse for them to feel delight, pamoja. One who feels delight, they don't have to think, "May I experience joy and contentment," because it's natural. And then so forth, from one who is joyful and is content, who has sukha, and piti and sukha, there's no need for them to think, "May my mind be concentrated," because for one who experiences joy and contentment, it's natural for the mind to be easily concentrated. And then one whose mind is concentrated, they don't have to think, "May knowledge and vision, may insight arise," because it's natural for one whose mind is concentrated for insight to arise, and so on all the way up to liberation. So the root is sila. In that respect. So if we want to not be confused, or we don't want to feel self-respect, stop doing things that are not respectable. Stop doing things that create confusion. I mean, it's a bit simplistic, and I lived in California for a long time with a lot of therapists around. So, well, you can't kind of say that, Ajahn. So it's not so simple. But in terms of Buddhist psychology, it may not be exactly that simple, but it's a major contributing cause. If we keep the sila, if we live in a moral and responsible, harmless, honest way, then we're creating the causes for ease and well-being within ourselves to a great extent. So I'd like to find a way of languaging that becomes the next, after regular mindfulness sort of developed into compassion and self-compassion as a sort of an offshoot of mindfulness. So I think extending compassion, the practice of sila as a way of practicing compassion or developing compassion for yourself and for others, that's possibly a way forward. So if there's any creative therapists here or people who wish to develop this in a more full way, I'd like to suggest that. But it's workable. You don't have to put it in a religious context or have any kind of scriptural qualification, but just in terms of human psychology, then I would say that there's a way that it can be languaged that is not intrusive or oppressive, but is saying this is doing ourselves and the beings that we live with a lot of favors to live in this way. Yes, if you can pass the microphone behind you. Yes. Not quite yet. Yeah. There we go.
Thank you. Hi, thank you, Ajahn. You talked about the Buddha mind, and you talked about the mind that frames things around the self. I have anxieties, I have stress, and so on. And you also talked a bit about how we take these mindsets into our life. So, for example, what would you say are the practicalities of someone who goes to work, they have a lot of work going on, and they need to keep doing that workload because they need to, make income and pay their rent and so on. And yeah, what are the practical skills that person can practice to I guess look at that situation and that pressure, if you will, from the Buddha mind and not from the self-led mind?
I'm on about 20 different committees. So I spend a lot of time in meetings, reading agendas and minutes, and correcting minutes. And also I have a lot of responsibilities. Yeah, not just to go, I'm not complaining, but just so that's an area I've had to work with quite a lot. And the building project that we have that's due to launch on Tuesday of next week, It's an 11 million pound project. And I'm the managing director. I am. I mean, like on paper, it's like I'm the managing director of Amaravati Developments, which is responsible for the running of that project. I'm the MD. So I have with telephone number size figures attached to that. So decisions have to be made, responsibility has to be taken, contracts have to be read, and you have to put your name on them. So that there's a way that we can hold taking responsibility and weighing things up seriously, and that you're using your name and your skills or your experience, your situation to help do the work that needs to be done, or whatever things you might be involved with or responsible for. But to not take them personally, like I was describing about success and failure and decision making. And so it makes such a huge difference if we don't take things personally. It doesn't mean to say we refuse to write our name, or you don't just sign your name, person. It doesn't help anyone. That's still a lot of self in that, like, or writing the word I with a lowercase I. There's still a certain amount of self can be involved in that. It's more the perspective that all of that is held in. So that with this large-scale building project that is kind of in process now and is due to last for a couple of years, then I do literally with my name on it. I do my best to acquaint myself with all of the materials that are involved. To when decisions need to be made, I try to read up what are the pros and cons, what are the different things that are involved, and then when I need to make input, rather than saying, we should do this, I might say, well, from looking at all of this, it seems like this is a good way forward. What do you think? Or how does that sound? So you're working in a collaborative way, but you're not shy of putting forward your own perspective. If you are trying to control everything, or there's a sense of it's got to go this way, and I'm determined to get this result, then, as I say, you are toast, or you're likely to be toast, or toasted. Because that kind of any kind of rigidity or fixation on a specific result almost necessarily is going to create conflict. Either fear in yourself that result isn't going to happen, or tension between you and others that might have a different perspective. They might have better information or more experience, or they have a different perspective. So both those, not taking it personally, working collaboratively, but also not being afraid to take initiative and to put forth, well, this looks like a good way forward, and what do you think? And along this whole process of this particular project of building a new sala and workshop and everything, it's been in process for quite a number of years. But that's how I've tried to operate along the way, working in a collaborative way and being ready to sort of give direction or say yes, let's do it, or weighing up considerations, but that the more that it's not about me or what people think of the project as an idea, but what's actually going to work on the ground, what's going to be beneficial, what's of practical use as far as one can tell. So it's not about the personalities or reputation or any kind of superficial thing, but really what is there, what's going to serve the community, what's going to be a good gathering place with a good kitchen and a good workshop, and it's going to work on the ground. That's the primary thing. If people will say, oh, thank you very much, Ajahn Amaro, this is really great. Okay, but it doesn't have to be a significant or deciding factor. Or it might be that people feel the opposite, like, oh, why did Ajahn Amaro do this? Grumble, grumble, grumble. Okay, well, we'll learn that. We'll remember that for next time. We'll learn about that for future. That looked like a good way forward. And all the discussions, it seemed like this was a good solution. On the ground, it didn't quite work. We didn't take X or Y or Z into account. Okay, we'll learn that. We'll remember that for next time or next situation that's comparable. So the less it's about personality and reputation, and the more it's about practicalities, then I find that the easier it is to give direction or make decisions or make input, and that. So to be honest, I'm not trying to boast, but I don't lose any, even though it's a large-scale project with a big price tag on it, I don't find myself losing any sleep over it or worrying about what people will think of me. Like okay, well, we've worked together as a team, we're doing the best we can, let's see how it works out, and taking each step as it's needed along the way. So I don't know if that's helpful for your what work situation you have, but
I feel like the quantity of the work is what's overwhelming me at the moment. The sheer number of hours I need to put in.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to you make your own decisions, but one of the things is also feeling obligated to meet what you perceive as other people's expectations is dukkha, and you make your own decisions. It's your life and your own choices. But going back to my sort of anxious period, I spent a huge amount of time and energy trying to fulfill what I thought other people wanted me to be and to do. And then it slowly dawned on me that what I was doing in that, and that often my estimation of what people expected wasn't the same, and also sometimes other people's expectations were not very realistic or were more selfish on their part. And so during that period, as I was trying to work with that and to not be dominated by that anxiety of trying to please everyone all the time and fulfill everyone's expectations, or what I perceived as other people's expectations, I used this little kind of motto or mantra: just do what you do and let the world make of it what they will. Just do what you do. Trust in your own good intentions, to respect your own limits. And then if people praise you, okay. If they criticize you, okay. You're not being hard-hearted or not caring, but you're learning to have faith in your own capacity, your own abilities, and not trying to just fulfill imaginary expectations or what you're assuming. Just doing the best you can with each situation, and then some people will love it, some people will hate it, most people will ignore it completely. Yeah. And that I think is the same for many of us, if not most of us, that well, we can spend an enormous amount of energy worrying about what they think, the mysterious they, and they don't really care. They often don't really care. Or sometimes it is a bit closer. It's actually our boss who's saying, we need more from you. But then the more that we develop a sense of self-confidence or trusting in our own good intentions, then we find, at least I found it's myself much more able to say, well, you might be asking that, but this is what I can give. I can't give any more than this. This is what I've got. And if it's not enough, well, I'm sorry, but that's all that there is. And if you're saying that from a place of coolness and not sort of, this is all there is, back off, leave me alone, then if it's coming from a responsive, cool place rather than a reactive, agitated place, then mysteriously people are much more able to receive that, and you find people will say, I'm sorry, I didn't, I wasn't thinking, I was just, because you always say yes, you always manage to come up with the good, so I just was asking you because you're the easiest person, you always say yes and you always do it. Well, yeah, I'm trying to break that habit actually. And so that can also be a blessing for other people who habitually ask too much or expecting too much. But it's the way we're holding it within ourselves, and where we speak from. If that's, as I said, if that's something that's really in tune with reality and not reactive, not sort of self-based, but more like, I can lift a 50-pound rock, but I can't lift a 150-pound rock. Sorry. Then that's just that kind of practical assessment can have its a very helpful effect. Yes, if you can use the microphone. There's one here as well.
If it's not condescending, being sort of older and grey, as you were talking about earlier on, I thought that was a wonderful answer to a young person in terms of advice for the future, and that was very, very, very wise. The question I want to ask is going back to Buddhist psychology, and you probably remember maybe a couple of years ago at the start of lockdown, you gave a talk online to Buddhist society about renewal in I think it was spring and renewal and so forth. And what I can remember of it, an impressive talk, was about people having an opportunity to renew when they've offended. And so the question that I want to ask is based on Buddhist psychology and what the Buddha might have said about dealing with criminality. And I'm desperately trying to find a hook to hang it on to what you said earlier on. But you mentioned mind-altering substances and the abuse of drugs and alcohol. So I'm perhaps using that as a hook, really. And the psychological state that somebody is in to get to a stage where they need relief from psychological pressures through mind-altering drugs or mind-altering substances. So I suppose two questions is what do you feel that puts somebody in a position that they are needing to step back from life and feel that they want to take mind-altering drugs or mind-altering substances? And how would the Buddha, or do you feel, would look at dealing with their problem in terms of rehabilitation? And you spoke about therapeutic activities, and there's the 12 steps therapeutic process, which talks about stages through a 9-month period. So this is not an instant solution. So a little bit of a waffly question. I don't know whether you can get anything out of that, but so often I've seen it, and I've worked in the area of criminology and working with offenders and so forth. The wider society doesn't address these issues in a sufficiently serious way, in my view, and you keep seeing the same people coming round again. And I'm not aware of any Buddhist intervention in this area. So, are you, in terms of currently, any Buddhist intervention in drug and alcohol rehabilitation, and what is the Buddhist psychology around crime prevention?
There's a few things in there. I think I was a serious drinker as a teenager. Fortunately, I came from a poor family, so I didn't have enough money to be drunk all the time. But I was running up to the time about 19, 20, up to my 21st birthday. I was seriously drunk 4 or 5 nights a week. Which was as much as I could afford. And my 21st birthday present to myself was to stop drinking. And my taking off to Southeast Asia to pursue some spiritual path was part of that. But I think what happens is that's the easy go-to place, and is also either socially acceptable in terms of alcohol, or socially available, if not legal, in terms of drugs, other mind-altering substances, or prescription drugs that are obtained illegally and such like. So that's the easiest escape route, and as human beings, we are ingenious. We find where the quickest pathway is. We go to the bush where the berries are. We find the easiest track. And so to get relief from these states of distress or agitation or dissatisfaction, then taking a drink or taking some drugs, to blot things out or to speed everything up or to push it away. That's what we do. We easily go to the most available and fastest fix, and even though it might be socially criticized, or we know it's only a short-term solution, certainly as a sort of teenager, so reckless. I met someone I was at school with at the funeral, at the ceremony at Chithurst, quite surprisingly, and I didn't know him well. He was a couple of years below me. But he said, "Oh yeah, I know you. You were known as reckless. That was, your reputation was reckless." So interesting. Yeah, having been a Buddhist monk for 40 years, but that, yeah. So as a reckless teenager, that was the easiest thing: is just get wasted on as often as possible on whatever was available and whatever you can get away with. So but then, by the time I was 20, then seeing that this doesn't solve anything, and I feel that what in terms of the use of drugs and alcohol as an easy escape or as a buffer, because alternatives are not available, or alternatives take more work. It's more work. It's not such a simple track as just hit the off license or go to the pub or find a dealer on the street. And if you're in the drug acquisition business, you know where to go. You know where to find stuff. You know how to recognize what a dealer's wearing or what they look like or where to find. In my memory, not that I've looked for anything like that recently, but if you're in the field, you know the signs, whatever your drug of choice might, or your behavior of choice might be. So that it takes work and it takes effort. But and I said my 21st birthday present to myself was to stop drinking, because I could see if I don't change this, I'm going to be dead by the time I'm 25, either through just alcohol poisoning or just reckless living. I felt I had some extremely competent guardian angels that. Kind of joking, and not joking. As a teenager, there were some scrapes I got into, some crashes I had that. But how did I get out of that one? So without too much more than a couple of scars. I was just remembering the other day. One day, I after a bottle of vodka, I woke up with a beer handle the handle of a beer mug in my back. But my back feels a bit strange. And I kind of reached around, and there was this lump of glass sticking in my back. I've still got the scar with a bit of a handle of a beer mug sticking in my back. Oh, messed up the sheets as well. Okay, bit of tidying up to do this morning. So I kind of somewhat familiar with the territory, but it was only when it was like this isn't a way forward. This is a dead end, and I don't want my life to be this story. And that's the kind of thing, as an inner motivation needs to happen. And then I didn't know what the way forward was, but I had strongly suspected meditation and spirituality was the path to go by. So in terms of criminality and weaning people off that as a go-to place in society, I think presenting the other options in mindfulness practices, meditation, making it more available, making it more accessible, and support. I think AA, the 12-step programs, are absolutely brilliant. I really, and I spend more in America, but also here in England, been quite involved and supportive of those programs. I feel they're extraordinarily skillful, and particularly the foundational principles behind AA, the people who created that are, extraordinarily inspired, to establish those steps and see that both gathering together with people of a similar experience, making a public commitment to want to change, and supporting each other along the way. All various aspects of it, I think, are extraordinarily skillful and very, very effective. Very effective. in this country, there are some Buddhist programs or groups that function on that basis. One called fifthprecept.org. You can look at a website. The fifth precept is refraining from drugs and alcohol. A man called Kevin Griffin was just here. He lives in California, but he was over here teaching, and his whole field is Buddhism and the 12 steps and applying Buddhist meditation, Buddhist principles to dealing with addiction. He was a professional musician, a rock musician for many years, so he's very well acquainted with the vast array of addictive possibilities from his own experience. But so that's become his sort of field. So he was invited to teach at various retreats and events and different groups. So there's if you look for it, there's quite a few resources available. I think it's interesting. Lumpur Kema Dhammo, who's the Buddhist chaplain for many prisons in this country, and he's actually the longest standing chaplain of any sort in the British prison service. He made the comment that I think 60% or 70% of people incarcerated are for things they did in a state of intoxication. It's a massive majority of people are in prison because of things they did in an altered state, and that either alcohol or drugs. That's not insignificant. And so providing alternatives and making those available. One of the things is that Buddhism is not a proselytizing religion, so we don't kind of advertise or knock on people's doors or promote ourselves. So it has to. The general dynamic is that people come to us and ask for input or for assistance. And so, personally, I'm very happy to lend a hand where possible if people are interested. But we're not sort of petitioning members of parliament or local medical services saying, you need us. We've got this program. Another interesting thing I was asked to do was when I was in California, where I was living in Mendocino County. They were trying to introduce a needle exchange program for addicts, and the epidemiologically, a very, very long word, providing clean needles for drug users is a very effective way of helping people to stay healthy and stopping the spread, particularly of HIV and hepatitis, which is very, very common amongst needle users, drug users. And so they had a day-long session. The Mendocino County Medical Board had a day-long session in Ukiah, which is the county town of Mendocino. And they approached me and said, could you give a talk about moral ambiguity? Because giving an addict a fresh needle can seem like something that is going to be causing more of a problem. So, and there's the argument across the field of is this helping or is this hindering? What should we do? So, can you give a talk about moral ambiguity? So that was an interesting way to contribute to the area. Both you're not trying to support drug use, but you're trying to support well-being, and so that was. An interesting session that I was a part of quite a few years ago now, but that was part of the picture. Anyway, 4:00 has come around, so thank you for your only 2 or 3 questions we have time for this week, but thank you for your good questions and your attention, and look forward to seeing you all next week.